Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Charlene Sani, and we'll be walking through the steps of unlocking your digital experience with Sitefinity Insight. This webinar is brought to you by Sitefinity and our premium partner, Flywheel Strategic. So I'm going to hand it over to our speakers, Heather and Scott.
Thank you very much, Charlene. Thanks for joining me, Heather.
Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. So I want to just start with a little bit of context about sort of even what we're hoping people get out of this conversation and why we even felt it might be helpful to have this conversation. It's worth mentioning that I think it's obvious, but to all of us, digital experience matters. We're all here because we are people who believe that there's a way for digital experiences to prosper and be done even better than we're already doing them today. And that's the kind of content that we're going to cover in this webinar. There's all kinds of tools everywhere, and there's a lot of data out there in the ecosystem, and it's very, very scattered. And so we all care about figuring out how to do this right. There is a tool that we're obviously going to talk about. Sitefinity Insight is going to be the main focus of this webinar today. And there's value there that we would like to demonstrate. But I think more so, it's just making sure that everybody gets a moment to get themselves in the headspace to elevate their game when it comes to building good digital experiences. You might learn something, you might take a nugget away to help you prosper and grow as you move forward. So we've got the question panel open. We want to make sure there's lots of space for getting your feedback and questions as we go through this presentation. As Charlene mentioned, Heather and I are here today to walk you through this. Heather from Progress. I'm one of the partners at Flywheel Strategic. We're a premium Sitefinity partner, been in the ecosystem a long time, hopefully to share some of that knowledge and experience as we go. We'd love you to connect with us on LinkedIn. That's where I live. I know that I see Heather there a lot as well. So reach out to us. Feel free to engage as much as we can continue to be helpful to you in your digital experience. What we're going to go over today, we're going to just start making sure that you have a few of the resources that you can leverage after the webinar. We'll come back to this slide at the very end. And then we're going to get into some of the best practices and principles that underpin the way that Sitefinity Insight provides value. Heather's going to take us through a demo to show you this for real. We're not just going to be talking. And then we'll see if there's any questions and takeaways at the end of that demo from Heather. So these are some of the Flywheel resources that we have available. The QR code will take you directly to our collection of onboarding videos for Sitefinity Insight. If you've got the product or if you're curious about it, that's a good way to lean in and really start to take advantage of what the system has to offer. So that first resource is probably the most applicable to exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We do get involved with customers and prospects who aren't quite sure where to start or exactly how their environment can be optimized. Take a look at the digital health checks that we can provide. That might be a good place to start. And we're happy to have a conversation just to evaluate whether that might be an appropriate thing to help advance your digital experience. Quick plug for anybody that's in the Toronto area. I am coming to you from the cold climate of Toronto today, and it is a little chilly. We are doing a live digital strategic planning workshop in Toronto on December the 14th. If you want to know more about that, you can go to that link. And then finally, I spend my day chatting, helping, digging in and uncovering some of the opportunities. If you would like to get on a call with me, there's my calendar. Go ahead, book some time. Let's get to know each other a little bit more. Let's get into this and those concepts that I talked about. I think we're all here. I think everybody that's here can relate to the scenario of the demands that are put on digital experience managers. Those digital marketer dilemmas are familiar. Perhaps some of you are a little bit more, a little further along with dealing with that dilemma. But we all know about the silos of independent data within the organization. Different teams might have even picked a tool and started using it without sort of communicating that. There's a lot of independent systems out there, but yet we get asked to articulate the wholesome picture of what's inside the organization and what's in all those separate silos. And we're expected to be able to tie this all together quite easily. And I love this one. Everybody in our role always gets asked to justify the ROI, which I think is a valid challenge. But it can be very difficult to say that we did all this content, we produced these experiences, we put all this information out there, and it produced this specific business impact. That is a very familiar situation, and one that we're going to help you think about improving in the next in the balance of this half hour. We want to get to that dreamland of good connected systems that all have purpose. They haven't just been kind of plucked off the shelf and somebody experimented with them, so that you can get that comprehensive picture, that it's a cohesive narrative that you are able to tell, that you're connected to everyone that engages with you in your organization, and that the data is clear so that you have actionable insights, and that ROI story almost presents itself. I don't know what you think, Heather, but I really believe one of the value propositions for Sitefinity Insight is that it can answer that question for you on what is the ROI of your content. It really does have the information there for that.
I was just going to say that it definitely helps you measure performance and understand, not only your audience, but how the information that you're putting out there is really performing and helping guide people towards the key goals that you have for your brand and your website.
Awesome. So tee it up for us if you can, Heather, and then take us into the demo, sort of some of these concepts in more detail, and show us how the system can do some of these things that I'm just talking about.
Sure. I just want to, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen out as well. But right now, what is Sitefinity really? So in essence, Sitefinity Insight, it really operates as a customer analytics and personalization platform. It focuses on things like aggregating and leveraging customer data to really help improve engagement and deliver personalized experiences and drive business growth. And I would say Sitefinity is really analogous to a customer data platform. I'm just going to go ahead and share out my screen and take over the slides from here.
Yep, roll on.
Great. So in today's modern digital world, customers interact with your company and brand through a growing number of channels. It's not just your website, and each typically accumulating customer data, as Scott said, in a disparate or siloed system. So no matter what channel they're choosing to work with you and your brand through, customers really expect a personalized, seamless experience. They want, regardless of how they interact with you and your brand, they want that experience to be cohesive. And so whether it's through their phone, through their tablet, through their laptop, Sitefinity Insight helps to aggregate all that data and organize it, from various sources. And it really helps you create a unified profile, providing a holistic customer view for you to really start understanding your audience and how they're interacting with you and your brand. It offers features that allow businesses to really analyze customer behavior, create segments, and personalized experiences as well. So as we get into the demo, we'll actually go through not only how you can create those personalized experiences, but how you can analyze the data to really start to understand who your audience is versus kind of guessing and having hypotheses. You can actually have a hypothesis, put it in place through Insight, and then actually understand if you are correct. And then you can adjust over time. So again, it's more of an iterative approach. So the types of interactions, that we deal with are anything from interactions that can be tracked on site. So things like a page view, a form submitted, a file download. So these might be things that are online and on your site that people are going to interact with. So that's one channel. But you also have a number of different channels. So off-site channels could be through a number of different locations. It might be through an email marketing campaign that you put out, maybe somebody attended a webinar that like you're doing today with us, or even a paid search. So these are different types of interactions that we can track, again, not just on your website, but through all the channels that your constituents, your customers, your consumers are interacting with you and your brand through.
And Heather, I'll just re-emphasize,
yeah,
that's a big aha moment when we introduce Sitefinity Insights to our customers, is that it has the capability, and I know you're going to get to this in the demo, of bringing in data from other systems and helping you get that holistic view. So offsite tracking is something that a lot of people don't think they even have the capacity to do. So we'll get into that a little bit more.
Great. Yeah, and when we talk about off-site interactions, we can also track offline interactions. So not only those interactions that are happening through other online channels, but offline interactions. Maybe somebody's attending a social event, or maybe you have people that are working at a conference and collecting business cards. Maybe there's a telephone inquiry. So these are also types of activities that we can track, and there's a number of different ways that you can get your data through these different channels into Sitefinity Insight and start analyzing that data. So how does Insight use interactions? So again, we've talked about all the types of interactions we can track, but what do we do with those interactions? So Sitefinity Insight uses interactions to measure the performance of key conversions and touch points. We'll talk a little about more about what those are in a moment. But beyond just measuring your, performance of key conversions and touch points, which may help you understand, what your ROI is, it also helps you start to get to know your audience better and where they are in their customer journey. So to break it down even further, excuse me, with regards to measuring performance, we want to track our key business goals and understand what's attributing to them. So think about touch points as marketing initiatives that really aim to optimize conversions. These should be measured for their impact and effectiveness. They're a single interaction, and some examples of these types of touch points are things like blog posts, paid search campaigns, social media posts, and mobile app usage. So those might be some of those touch points that are going to drive people towards your, key conversions. So your key conversions really represent your business goals that you have, for your brand. So these have a direct correlation and impact on the business. They can be positive or negative, and they can require more than one interaction. So an example of a conversion might be a lead form that was submitted, maybe a self-service action, or even a product purchase. And so we use personas to really, personas and touch points to really better understand who our audience is and where they are in their journey. So we start to be able to provide a more optimal experience for them as they move forward with our brand. So we can segment our audience into key personas and personalize their experience based on attributes that we know about them, their behaviors, their interactions. Personas really tell us who someone is. Personas have a defined threshold, and defined interactions or contact properties assigned to a contact help us start to measure, points. So we use a point system that's going to help us understand when they cross a particular threshold that's been assigned to a persona. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the demonstration. But for instance, if I have a persona, I may create a series of activities that are going to associate somebody with that persona. So as they go through and perform those activities, we're assigning them points. And as they hit a threshold that we've defined for our persona, then they become associated with that persona. We can use their persona to do things like personalization later on, which we'll actually show in the demo. Similar to personas are lead scoring, but lead scoring is a little bit different. So lead scoring helps us know where somebody is in their user journey. It's based on if you have a sales funnel or a journey that you're anticipating somebody going through, it's going to have a series of stages. And a lead score helps us identify where they are in those stages. So rather than having a single threshold, a lead score is going to have multiple stages with their own thresholds. And you use a similar point structure, but instead of having a single threshold that gets them related to the persona, you'll see them go through the stages of that lead score. And you can even reset them back to 0 to take them out of the lead score. For instance, maybe you're looking for somebody to attend an event. Once the event's occurred and they've attended it, you can actually reset them to 0 to then retarget them for other types of initiatives that you have.
I like to say that lead scoring is how you just sort of prioritize the people that have gone through a conversion. That's another way to think of it.
Great. Good insight. All right, so this diagram really illustrates the data orchestration cycle of how the optimization and personalization of a multi-channel digital experience can happen. So as we discussed earlier, your audience interacts with your organization and brand across many different channels, not just your website. So we talked about all those different interactions. Now with Sitefinity, we're able to track user behavior and interactions across those multiple channels and aggregate that audience data for deeper analysis. And so as we talked about, we use that data within Sitefinity Insight to start to measure the performance of key conversions and touch points, as well as to better understand who our audience is. We do that with things like our personas, our lead score types. We also have AI-based segmentation and unified contact. So we actually are able to create a deep customer journey analysis by giving you individual contacts and identifying what personas they're associated with, where they are in a lead score journey, as well as their entire journey in a timeline format to understand how they got to where they are today. So all that, think of the journey as like breadcrumbs to understand how people are maneuvering through the touch points that you've created for them on whatever channels you're working within, and then how they got to those key goals that you had. So you can start identifying where the successes are and where you might want to pivot or modify the journey that you're creating for them through your touch points. All right, did you want to add anything else to that, Scott, before we move on?
I feel like keep going. I think this is great. I've got a few comments if we have time, and I'll add them at the end.
Yeah, and so just one last thing here. So as we start to really understand more about our audience, then look at it goes full circle. So we're really able to start providing a cohesive and personalized experience through all those channels that they interact with us in. So that's kind of that last arrow going back to the channel column there. Again, it's full circle and an iterative approach. So I'm just going to kind of key us up for the demo. We all want to get into that live demo. But today I'm going to talk about, or I should say I'm going to role play in the demo. We're going to use a person from our audience, Marge Simpson. You know, she's in her mid-30s, she's female, and she's been going through and interacting with our organization. And the organization that we're going to use today is Coriander Lane Bank. And Marge happens to be interested in getting a mortgage. And so Marge has been interacting with Coriander Lane as a customer. She has multiple accounts. And she's recently been searching for home financing options. She's used the Coriander Lane Bank online mortgage rate calculator, and she has visited the mortgage product page several times. So these are some interactions that we've been tracking about Marge, and we're going to look at how you know, we are able to upload that information in a number of ways, but we actually have the ability to look at a CSV file to kind of see that activity stream and how we can upload that. So let's go ahead and get into the demo. All right. So this is the site that we're going to be using today for our demonstration. So Marge is coming and visiting this site, you know, and she's maybe been getting information through email campaigns we have. She might have clicked on some paid search that we've put out there. So as she comes through and starts learning more about Coriander Lane, who she's already a customer of ours, we've started to identify that she's really interested in owning a bank. So that's kind of the premise for this particular demonstration. Before we go directly into Insight, I want to mention that with Insight, we have a number of ways to track information. Within Sitefinity's content management solution, we have a connector, and that connector has a lot of native integration within Sitefinity to automatically start collecting things as people click through the pages. You're also able to use Google Tag Manager to collect information. So that information from your website can go directly into Insight, but we want to set up the connector first. So the first thing I want to do is kind of bring you into the connector configuration for Insight, just for those people who are curious. As we come into Sitefinity, if I come over to the Sitefinity Insight under administration, this is where we would configure our connector. And so within our Sitefinity Insight interface under administration, we can get an access key, and we would come here and set up our access key. Once our access key is set up, we can add our sites, and you can have multiple sites. You can connect multiple sites to a single data center like you see above, or with our bank site that we're going to be working with today, I've connected this single bank site to a single MyBank data center. And we'll be working with the MyBank data center today. So let's go ahead and take a look at the MyBank data center. So this is a dashboard for MyBank. It's a data center. And so Sitefinity Insight is a separate tool from Sitefinity CMS. And again, that's because it's not just collecting data from your website. It's collecting data from a series of different channels. And so we want to be able to work with those different channels. And so we talked a lot about being able to pull in information. Here you'll see some of the information that we're tracking. We are tracking those individual conversions, and you define the conversions that you want to track. So those are your key business goals. You can also define specific touch points you want to track. So again, that's the content and the you know, email campaigns and all that other information you're putting out through your channels to entice people to go through and towards the conversions that you have for your business. we're able to track individual visitors, and initially we track them as anonymous visitors, and we're able to personalize whether they're anonymous or not. So we still have the optimization, even if we don't know exactly who they are, but we know a lot of information about them. But once they provide a piece of information that's personally identifiable, such as an email address, we're able to put them into a specific contact profile, so we can aggregate all the data we've collected about them in a profile that you can actually investigate. We're going to do that with Marge's profile in a few moments. Other things that we're able to do here are, again, generate those personas. So beyond measuring performance of our touch points and our conversions, we're also able to start measuring our, I shouldn't say measuring, we're also able to start understanding our audience based on who they are. And you're going to define some key personas you might have and identify some of the activities you would anticipate these types of personas will perform. You're going to set up a point system, and then as they start navigating and interacting with your brand through these different channels, they'll start increasing their points till they hit the point structure that you've set up for the persona. So once they hit that threshold, then they'll become associated with that persona. Again, similar with lead scores, we're able to create a series of lead scores. As you see, lead scores, rather than having a single threshold, have different stages, and within those stages, they each have a threshold. So you can see somebody going through that journey. Again, then you can see them going forward, and you can even see them going backwards depending on how their point structure works. So again, we can give people points every time they perform an interaction, only the first time they perform an interaction. We can deduct points based on different interactions, and we can even reset them to 0. And these interactions can be a number of different things, and we'll kind of explore that in a few moments. So how do we get data into Sitefinity Insight? So that's the next thing I want to talk about. So we're actually going to go into our administrative section. We're going to upload some data. So once I set up the tracking within Sitefinity Insight, we're automatically starting to collect that data. So it's automatically coming in. We have the ability to automate the process of uploading data from third-party systems, which I'll talk about in a couple moments. But first, I want to talk about, working with a CSV file, for example. So let's go to administration. And under administration, we're going to find our data center. So again, we're working with the MyBank data center. And I have a lot of demo sites, so you'll see a lot of information there. You may see 2 or 3, depending on how many data centers you have set up for your implementation. But I'll go ahead and look at data imports. And so this is where we can really start to pull in the data from Marge. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete a couple of these. I've added some data already, and we'll just remove these repeats. And then what we'll do is we'll actually go ahead and import the data. Now you can also automate this process using Azure Data Factory to actually automate the process. So for example, we have an online example that you can use to automate the process of uploading information from Salesforce, for example. So those types of things are possible. We also have a integration hub that just came out with Sitefinity 15. And the integration hub is based on Workato, and Workato is an iPaaS application that already has several thousand integrations with different applications that you might often use. So rather than having to go through and use our APIs to code these integrations, you do have the potential to just create a very low-code, no-code configuration to pull data in from these different applications, and also you have the ability to push data out to these different applications as well, so bi-directional. Let's go ahead and import some data. So I'm just going to go ahead and click import. And before we select our CSV file, I actually want to kind of pull up the CSV file so we can see what it looks like. So this is an activity stream for Marge. It shows that she's had some different types of activities. So again, this kind of breaks down that interaction that we were talking about, what makes up an interaction. We have our predicate, which is the action she performed. She visited certain pages, she opened an account, and then the object happens to be what she interacted with. We have our timestamp, and in this instance, we also have Marge's email address, which is their personally identifiable piece of information. So lots of information. We understand what the activity stream looks like, and we can upload that, and it's actually going to create, because we have known information about her, such as her email address, create a profile for her that we can investigate. So let's go ahead and upload that. So we'll select the CSV file, and I'll come over to my downloads, and I have my CSV uploads, and we'll select Marge. We'll go ahead and open that up. It's just going to make sure that the formatting is appropriate. We do expect a certain format when you're uploading files, and we give you that format through our documentation. And then it looks good, so I'll go ahead and import. And then we see the imported data from Marge. So as that data starts to import, we see that it's successful. And as we come back over to our analytics side, we can actually investigate Marge's profile. So I'm going to open up the MyBank Data Center dashboard and come to Contacts. And we should see Marge's information appear in just a moment. And there we have Marge. So I'm just going to open up Marge. And then this happens to not be Marge's information, so I'm actually going to open up another contact just so we have a little bit more data to show. But there she is. It just took a minute to upload. So there are Marge's. When I come through, I can look at Marge's information. So I see that we have a lot of data about Marge coming in. We see where her job title, she's a homemaker. Her first interaction was over 3 years ago. And then we get to see a lot of different data here. But some of the more interesting data is as we come down, we can see that she's in the home loan journey lead score. And so she's at the approved stage. We also can see that the personas that she's associated with are product home loans, and she also has some similarity to the product savings account. As we scroll down even further, we can see some of the key conversions Marge has performed, as well as some of the touch points that she's interacted with as of late. And then we also can see her full journey. So this is that full journey timeline I was talking about, where we can see that, you know, she's gone through our site, she's opened a savings account. So here we see that conversion as opening a savings account. We also see she has an investment account. So the fact that she has multiple accounts, we might look at as being a key indicator that she's a good prospect for a home loan. So that might be one of the rules we set up in our persona for our home loan journey. We can also come down and start seeing that she's starting to make inquiries about home loan options. So these are interesting pieces of information. So based on all this information, you know, we can start ascertaining what type of activities we want to associate, you know, with our persona associated with the home loan journey. So again, just some information that's really good to have here. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the personas that Marge is associated with, as well as lead scores. So as I come over into personas, I'm going to go and look at the home loan prospect. And so as we come into the home loan prospect is going to have a specific threshold that we want them to pass. We can see the number of contacts that have passed this particular threshold. We can see the percentage of all visitors who are associated with this persona, as well as the number of all personas people associated with personas, what percentage of those are associated with this particular persona. We have a timeline to see as people are passing the threshold. And the nice thing is we can see contacts associated with the persona, conversions that people have performed that are associated with this persona, touch points they've interacted with. So you start to collect a lot of data about the different people that are associated with this persona, so that you can make adjustments and just have that for knowledge as you're starting to develop the different campaigns, the different content that you're going to use to work with these site visitors or audience members to drive them towards certain goals that you have in mind for them. As we come down, we can see that we have rules that have been created for this particular persona. You know, maybe a loan was settled, so we're going to reset somebody to 0. So we're going to take them out of this persona. If the visit contains home loans, we'll give them a point. If they've opened an investment account, we'll give them a point. So again, we're starting to create a rule structure that's going to start associating people with this persona. And that tells us who somebody is. With the lead scoring, it's really going to tell us where they are in their journey. So if we look at our home loan journey, we knew that Marge was associated with this approved section. So let's go ahead and investigate this. Again, you create these very similar based on rules to start associating points with people. But rather than having a single threshold, there are several thresholds that we can see. And so we see the breakdown of people who are in these stages within this journey. As we scroll down, again, you see a series of rules that are going to associate points. Again, you can give a one-time point. You can give a point every time somebody does something. You can reset them to 0. You can also create negative points. So there's a lot of things that you can do there. So those are some of the interesting things that I wanted to show you. And again, we don't have time to go into everything today. So we're going to jump back over into our CMS, and we're going to look at how we can take the information that we now have, such as the home loan journey, lead scoring, and then the persona associated with the home loans, and we'll use that information to then create more of a personalized experience. So the next time somebody who's similar to Marge comes into our site, we're able to present a very personalized journey. And so let's come back to the homepage of our site just to take a peek at that and look at what it looks like today. So we have this key call to action on our page, and it's very general. It's about the bank. We are mentioning our credit cards and more. And you'll notice that the tagline here says that Corian Delane Bank offers personal banking, bank solutions, institutional banking, and more. So again, based on all this information, it's very general and geared towards a larger audience. But if we know that somebody is interested in a particular product that we're selling, we may want to gear this messaging more towards that particular product. So let's go ahead and look at how we can do that. So I'm going to come back into the CMS. And the first thing we want to do is we want to create a user segment within the CMS that we want to personalize towards. And so that user segment may be based on a series of characteristics. I'll go to personalization. And those characteristics can come from Sitefinity Insight, but they can also be other things. Like you might want to create characteristics based off of somebody's geolocation or based off of a UTM parameter that they might have in their URL as they come to the site. We have an existing one right here that's geared towards the credit card promo, but let's go ahead and create another one. And so again, we're creating a segment that we want to personalize towards, and it can be a series of different characteristics. But we'll call ours home loan prospect. And I'll go ahead and add some characteristics. And so the characteristics I'm going to add are going to include my Sitefinity Insight information that I have. But as you see above, we could do it based off of geographical information, session-based information, or if somebody's logged in as like a user via the CMS, you can do it based off of account information. So the CMS can handle front-end users if you have gated content, for example. If they're logged in, we can also base information off of this. But let's go ahead and use our persona data that we have collected in Sitefinity Insight. So I'm going to say persona is, and we're just going to do home loan prospect, and we'll go ahead and save that. So that's one characteristic, but we have these and or operators so we can make a more complex user segment. So I'm going to go ahead and add a characteristic, and I also want to target this messaging towards people who have a lead score of a home loan journey, and maybe they're in the stage of maybe awareness. We'll go ahead and save that. And also I want to do the same thing, but this time choose the next stage so we can track multiple stages within that lead score journey and then message to those people in those two stages. So let's go ahead and home loan. And this time we'll choose the consideration stage and hit save. So now as people come in and they're either associated with the persona of home loan prospect or they have the home loan journey lead score and they're in the awareness stage or the consideration stage, we're going to start to message them more about home loans versus the general messaging that we have on our website. So we'll go ahead and create that segment. And so the segment gets created and we have these priorities. So I can move this up in priority if I want. Maybe I think the home loan prospect is more important for people to see than the existing customer credit card personalization. So again, if you have multiple personalizations applied to the same content or the same page, you can indicate which personalization takes precedence. So that way you're making sure that the right person's seeing the right messaging at the right time. Let's go ahead to our pages section and use this information to go ahead and then personalize our page. So here we're in the bank pages. I'm just going to go to the home page and we'll see very similar to what we saw on the live site. We see that we have our editing interface for our page. And so I'm not really going to use much over here. I just wanted to mention that we have the ability to navigate through the page if we need to, but all I'm going to do is actually create a personalization on a particular content block. Now you can personalize an entire page. You can create, have a different variation of the page with a whole new template with all different content. But typically what we see is that people just want to create personalizations around key call to actions, for example, which we'll show you now. But again, both options are available. So as I come in, I can create a personalized section or a version of this content block for our page. So we'll just go ahead and choose our home loan prospect, and that's what we want to personalize towards with this variation. So we'll go ahead and click done, and an indicator appears showing that we have different variations available to us. And once that's there, I can go ahead and edit that variation, or I can traverse through the variations by clicking back on the personalization option. But I'll go ahead and click edit. In this instance, we're going to go ahead and update our content a little bit. So the changes that we're going to make to our content, let me see. I'm just going to say, instead of credit cards and more, we're just going to change this to say mortgages and more. And then for the key tagline, rather than it being more general towards all the different types of options we have for product, I'm actually going to gear it specifically towards our mortgages. So owning a home is a big financial commitment, but with Coriander Lane Bank in your corner, again, you have the ability to look at our options for mortgages and whatnot. So we also have a key link here. So I'm going to update these little links and we'll go ahead and update those.
Heather,
and again,
can I ask you a couple questions?
Oh, sure.
There's one question. How can I merge two personalities or personalizations instead of choosing one versus the other based on priority? I want more than one to make effect on the page or in my widget personalization.
I can take that one, Heather, because I was preparing an answer because I also saw the question when you were coming up.
Sure, cool.
While you're doing that, I'm going to just keep filling out the data if nobody minds. That way we can kind of
absolutely.
So bear in mind that you can personalize elements of the page uniquely, so that if you have one content block can be personalized and targeted at one set of criteria, and a different set of criteria can be triggered to personalize a different content block. There are two approaches that we've employed to address the scenario that this question is asking about. One is it sometimes helps to have a third criteria that is defined that blends the two criteria from the other two segments, and that's what you target at. And the other is, I just mentioned that you can have multiple elements on your page uniquely personalized. We've actually stacked content blocks on top of each other so that they can both hit to different segments. And in fact, when they quote don't hit, they're actually just left blank. So there's a few little tricks that might help you with that scenario.
All right,
that's right. Yeah, there's a lot of different options. And as Scott said, you can definitely add multiple content objects to a page and personalize them separately so they're independent in the way that you're personalizing them and who they're being personalized towards. Or you can, for instance, hide one and not show it unless you have a personalization that's hit and you want to show it. All right, so I've updated this. And we've added Coriander Lane, mortgages and more. Owning a home is a big financial commitment. And then we have some more detail there. And we've updated our two links to be more geared towards apply now to bring them to the mortgage application, or go to the mortgage calculator to understand, what their mortgage might look like based on the options they choose. So we'll go ahead and save that. Did anybody else have any questions? The next thing I was going to do is just kind of show you how we can preview this in the back end before we have it go live.
Yeah, there was one more question, Heather.
Sure.
Sorry.
So the question, I've got it up here, Charlene. There was a question about what's the underlying technology that enables tracking the users across the site and knowing who they are when they come back to the website or to your other properties. Basically, is this a cookie-based implementation, and what are the concerns about managing privacy and the long-term roadmap for the future?
Yeah. Absolutely. So we do use cookies. It's a first-party cookie that we're going to use. So it's not a third-party cookie or anything, but we're able to use a first-party cookie to identify a user. And when they're anonymous, it identifies them as an anonymous user, so they get a unique identifier that's associated with them. Once they're a known user, no matter how they're coming to your site or to your brand, we can merge all the data we've collected about that user across different devices. So we use the known contact unique identifier, which might be their email address or whatever you deem appropriate for tracking people. And we do have GDPR compliance. So if you did need to make sure that you're asking somebody if they want to be tracked, we do have that implemented. It's actually a configuration in the backend CMS that we have our own to allow people to accept being tracked by cookies or not, or you can work with a third party system to allow people to decline being tracked using cookies. So again, if somebody doesn't want to be tracked, they do not have to be, and you can configure that within the backend system or integrate with a third party to do so. And then if you are collecting data about somebody and they come to you and say, I don't want you to collect that data, or I want to see what data you've collected about me, we have that in the administrative interface within Sitefinity Insight that you can go and you can purge their data. You can also export their data so that they can see what you've been tracking about them as well. So there's a lot of management in the back end of Sitefinity Insight that allows you to make sure that you're maintaining GDPR compliance and are able to remove somebody's information as needed or let them know what you've tracked about them.
And I'll just add to that, that yes, if cookies are being blocked by certain users or present a challenge, there are some other sort of tips and tricks and techniques that we've employed by leveraging the rest of your marketing technology stack when you're doing some of that outbound engagement, or if you have a portal where the users log on. There are other ways of identifying them that's still appropriate that will continue to enable some of this technology. Not entirely, but there are some ways to make sure that you're still getting that personalized experience and getting the data that is relevant to help you make decisions.
That's great, Scott. Yeah, so definitely reach out if you have specific questions like that. You can reach out to Scott. You saw his LinkedIn in the beginning, as well as myself. And we're always here to help answer questions, because these are different challenges that people come up with, and your challenges may be different from others, but we're always happy to help. With the paid version of Insight, you also get an onboarding assistance. And so Scott can help with things like that as well, to help you build out a strategy to help kind of guide you through your initial implementation as you get used to working with Sitefinity Insight. But I've just created my variation. So again, we can see here, and again, I can click and go back and forth between the different variations. So I can say the not specified. So if they don't meet those criteria that we set forth, they'll see the basic general messaging. But if they do meet it, they'll see the home loan prospect messaging. And we do have a preview. So if we want to really see what it looks like in a live site, we have the ability to preview this page as. And so you can toggle back and forth between the different personalizations you've set up. So we'll just quickly do that, and then that kind of concludes what we had time to show during the demo. But I'll go here. We have our specific segments. Again, if people don't meet any of the criteria, this is what they're going to see. I don't have a personalization set up for the credit card promo here, but I do for our home loan prospects. So as I select that, we'll see that we see the change. So we see credit cards and more, and then we see it switch to mortgages and more with our new messaging and new buttons. So that's kind of creating a basic personalized experience based off the information that we collected. We talked about how we can collect that information. And again, we use that information not only to create these personalizations based on understanding who our audience is, but you can use it for things like tracking the performance and measuring the attribution level of the different content you're putting out there within Sitefinity Insight. So those are some of the other things you can do. We didn't get too deep into that today, but again, we have that the conversions that we can measure, as well as the touch points. And then again, our attribution models help us identify what touch points and information we're putting out there are really attributing to those key goals and conversions that we've set forth. But I think what I'll do is I'll go back to our PowerPoint and then see if we have any other questions. Let me get back here, and we'll go ahead and conclude the demo with that. And I think now, if we have any other questions that people might have, this is a great time to go over those.
I think that those are all the relevant questions. There was, just to confirm, because there was a question about Chrome deprecating support for third-party cookies, that the Sitefinity implementation is based on a first-party cookie.
That's correct. Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, so that shouldn't affect that. Yeah, that would. Sorry, Scott, I'm talking over you. My apologies. Go ahead.
So just to confirm, for the context of our conversation today about Sitefinity Insight, it's a first-party cookie, and that concern has been addressed that way. The question that we got was specifically related to a separate product, an implementation of native chat, and a challenge that was encountered with a third-party cookie warning. Not sure if that's in the scope or context of our skill set to answer on this call, but you might want to just reach out to your partner or support team to clear that one up.
That's right.
If there's any other questions, just pop them in. There was one more here that I'll throw at you, Heather, that came in, which was more about AI, because you mentioned it in your deck, We didn't get a chance to highlight that in the demo. Can you just speak to some of the AI capabilities that are available in Sitefinity Insight at the moment?
Yeah, there's a series of different AI-driven components within Sitefinity Insight, and those come with our premium version of Sitefinity Insight. We have the ability to create AI-based segmentation of users. So if you're not sure how to set up different personas, for example, we'll actually identify different segments based on user behavior and activity that you may not have been aware of, where might be a grouping of audience members or segment of audience members that you were unaware of. And that helps you kind of define additional personas based on found activities that are common across a series of people. So that's one of the AI-driven pieces of functionality we have. We also have an AI-driven, we have a lot of different attribution models. An attribution model is going to tell you, as you have a touch point, how it attributed to somebody going towards a conversion. We can do that based off of, was it the first thing they touched before they went and performed this conversion? Was it the last thing they touched? Was it somewhere in the middle? And then we give you different attribution rates. We also have an AI-driven one that's based off of additional information. So there's algorithms to identify, no matter where it was, first touch, last touch, or linear, the importance level of that particular touch point. So how effective was it? So that's another AI-driven piece. We also have AI-driven anomaly detection, where we'll actually send you out notifications letting you know if there's a sudden increase or decrease with your conversions or your touch points as far as their performance. And so if it goes way outside the bounds of what the system would have anticipated, you'll actually get an email that comes out identifying it that you can click on to go directly to that. And then the last one I just want to mention is we do have AI-driven widget, which works with Sitefinity Insight, and it does next best step recommendations. So it's going to say you might also like, and then it's going to give, based off their behavior and interactions, the content that they might want to visit next. So again, if it was somebody that's coming in and looking at a lot of mortgage data, it's going to probably provide some ideas of different content, like a quick links list of other content that might be valuable to that person to see. Were you going to say something, Scott?
I was going to add that I actually got one of those anomaly detection emails the other day for our site. And it was because somebody had stumbled across a white paper that we published about 3 years ago that it was still on the site, and we kind of stopped sort of highlighting it, but it was still there, and somebody found it, and I had originally set it up as a conversion that I was interested in caring about, and all of a sudden the anomaly was because it went from 0 engagement to 1, and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. That's good to see.
Yeah, so there's a lot of AI-driven components there that you can take a look at. Was there any other questions that anybody had, or I hope that answered that question for you?
No, I think we've got it covered now. So if there's anybody else that does want to follow up, we gave you our details for getting in touch, and please feel free to do so. Thanks a lot for joining me, Heather. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. I appreciate it as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.